I ask you a few questions from here.
Okay.
So the advertising industry is changing very fast, and digital media is overtaking traditional media. Which trends do you forecast in marketing and advertisement?
So I think there's probably three really big trends. One is obviously connecting with audiences. So if you think about the fragmentation of audiences, you think about mobile, you think about video, you think about new formats, you think about new creative formats or new devices, then I think the trend of multi-screen is going to continue to be a trend for the next 2 or 3 years, and people are going to want to be more holistic around that trend. They're going to want to connect with their audience on whatever device they are on, and they're going to want to sequence their messaging and their creative depending what situation they are. So I think the whole thing around multi-screen is a big trend. Okay,
yeah.
And I think at the moment it's probably creating more issues than it's solving problems because of the fragmentation of
there
audience.
is a big fragmentation.
Yeah, so I think that will continue to be a trend. I think you will see two things around multi-screen. One of which is I think technology innovation, and the second thing is creative innovation. And I think those two things go together really, really well. And I guess if you wanted to add a third thing, it would be sort of data across that multi-screen environment. So for me, multi-screen is a big theme that will continue to play out over the next 2 or 3 years. And I think, within that, when you start to think about the use of video as an advertising medium, there's no better way to connect with your audience, no better way to tell your story. The connection of that towards TV and how those worlds over the next 10 years start to come together. Because, on the video side, there's no technology issue between connecting TV and video and online. It's mainly a business model issue, yeah? And the way that media is monetized. That's why those worlds sort of live separately today. So I think video is going to play a big role, and it's going to play a big role in that mobile multi-screen environment. So you'll start to see that continue to play out.
Yeah, you can see that in applications like Vine or Instagram, where you can put videos right now, and advertisers are trying to get inside that. So it's pretty obvious that people love videos right now.
Absolutely, and just also think about the technology problem of getting you on your laptop compared to getting you on your mobile is one thing. But the big thing from an advertiser point of view is that when you're on your mobile device, you may be working, you may be socializing, so the context, the way that you're thinking, the way you receive messages may be very, very different. So that's why I say there's a technology challenge and a creative challenge.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really exciting. And I think you'll see some really forward-leaning advertisers, specifically in Spain. Spain is a pretty well-developed market. It's an incredibly creative market. But it's creative in terms of how it uses technology. So I think specifically in Spain, I think you'll see some of the big advertisers, the innovative advertisers, really pushing the boundary of multi-screen. So that for me is like one area that we'll be thinking about. I think the second one is how we buy media. And how we buy audiences, and I think the whole thing around programmatic, premium, how publishers, real-time bidding, how I access my audience. Because just because I can buy it real-time, but I can buy real-time for display today, but real-time for video, real-time for mobile. There's just a lot of development, I think, around how media is bought and transacted. And when I say media, I think it even goes further than that. I think how audiences are bought and transacted. Because in a way, I think it's going to shift more to buying an audience than it is buying specific media. And I think that's a world that both the publishers and the advertisers will adapt to as we move forward. And then I think the final one that will play out is the craziness around data.
Yeah, big data.
Big data.
Kind of a big thing right
now. Everyone is fighting over it. Everyone is trying to get control. Everyone's trying to get a little bit more data than someone else. But I think there's just craziness around it, and the reason why I call it craziness is because everyone has their approach to data, and I think you'll start to see data consolidated. You'll see data come together in a way that your advertisers can activate that data. And I think at the moment we think a lot about data in connecting with the right person, but I think data will become not only connecting with the right person, but also will give you information on how to connect. So what creative to use, what sequencing of your creativity you want to use. So I think there's a long way for data to go as well. So
yeah, and so you can use it like to predict what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, so predictive analytics is going to be really, really big. So if you were to ask me what are the 3 big trends, I would say multi-screen, programmatic and buying, and then the craziness of data, as I like to call it. Is that okay? Is that?
Yeah, really. It's very good.
Okay.
And well, do you think? Well, you kind of answered to that question, because do you think technology is overtaking creativity? I think you think they are to get together.
I have really strong opinions around this one, in the sense that there's lots of tension points in marketing and advertising, and some of it is done for innovation, some of it is done for money, for business, and some of it is done for the good of the audience, the good of the industry, I should say. And I think I think the way the industry has developed is sort of digital spun off on its own, and media and creative got separated. Yeah, and I think a lot of technology has been driven towards media and channels and things like that. I actually think that those two worlds will come back together in a much stronger way, because that's good for advertisers.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. What do we love about advertising? What do we love about this world that we work in? It's probably one of the most competitive industries there is. You just look at your advertisers in Spain. One financial company doesn't want to look like another financial company. One bank doesn't want to look like another. They all want to have their own personality. They all want to connect with the audience in a different way. So I think having media separated from creative and having technology separated from creative in some form is not really good for the industry. And I think one of the trends you'll see is those two things start to come back together. And then I guess the third tension point is business models. So basically, how do technologies companies survive? How do advertisers afford to connect with their audiences in a deeper way and get stronger ROI? I think some of the more traditional business models and how we buy media, how we buy technology will start to change. I think the way that we buy media, as a CPM or as a click and things like that. I think there's a lot of development to start to bring, and those sorts of things will release creativity and release technology.
Well, we are at Cannes Lions right now, and I think it's a good place to understand the trends that are going on right now in marketing and advertising. So, how important do you think this festival is for the industry?
I think if you watch the path of Cannes Lions, I think it's the heart of Cannes is absolutely in the right space. It's creativity. At the end of the day, it was sort of developed around an award event to recognise, the best in the industry from a creative and from a marketing point of view. Now, obviously over the years that has developed, because it's not only creative, it's not only good creative design or good creative development, but it's also the use of technology, it's also the use of media. So I think the way the industry has developed, or Cannes Lions has developed, I think is incredibly strong. You know, just look at the turnout, look at the money that's being spent to connect with, you know, both creative and media and advertisers, the brands and the partnerships that are formed. So I think it's incredibly important to the industry and its development as a whole. Because otherwise, you know, if you look around the world and you look at what's going on, is you've got data shows, you've got mobile shows, you've got design shows, you've got, you know, so it fragments really, really quickly. I think the good thing about Cannes Lions is that at the heart is creativity, at the heart is good marketing, and I think it brings all of those worlds together so that we can have a more, I guess in the US they say holistic, but a much more rounded conversation around that. So I like it. You know, it's expensive to be here.
Sure.
But it's hard not to be here.
Sure. I guess if you are in the marketing industry, you have to be here.
You have to be here.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, again, it's indicative of our industry. It's what our industry is all about. It's incredibly competitive. It's competitive from an advertiser perspective, but it's competitive from a technology perspective. It's, you know, it's competitive from a publisher's perspective. You know, look at Facebook, look at Google, look at Microsoft, look at the money that they're spending to connect with advertisers. It's really competitive out there. You know, we don't compete in the same way with those guys, you know, because we are a technology partner to the advertising industry. You know, we're not a publisher. We don't own inventory. Media. We don't own media, and so we feel that's our advantage because we can stay totally independent. You know, and we can address the real needs of the advertising industry as opposed to addressing, you know, our own, you know, personal inventory needs. But I think Cannes is really important.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And I love it. Where else would you like to be?
It's
on
so
such
nice.
a beautiful day.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful day.
But don't tell your readers that we were doing this.
Well, at Sizmek you offer modern solutions for advertisers, like the Open Ad Stack initiative or the multi-screen platform.
Yep.
How do you help advertisers to make more of themselves, like to make better business?
Well, I think the Open Ad Stack initiative is really important to Sizmek, really important to us as a company, because we sit back from the market and say, what is going on? And we know that an advertiser or their chosen agency in Madrid or Barcelona, the technology tools that they want to use may be different to another advertiser, but take it further than that. The technology tools that an advertiser wants to use in France is different to maybe the tools that they want to use in Spain, and the tools that they want to use in China are different to the tools they want to use in Vietnam. And so for us, one size doesn't fit all. It's not one ad platform fits all. I think you have to be able to bring the worlds together. Let me give you a really good example of that. We talked earlier about programmatic and DSPs. We see more so now than ever that when people buy a media plan, they will have more than one DSP on that media plan. They may have 5 DSPs on that media plan. But actually to go and execute that buy, to execute that plan, they have to use 5 platforms to do that. Okay, that doesn't make sense. And one is it's hard from an execution point of view, but on the other hand, then you've got 5 sets of data, which doesn't make sense either. So the way that we look at it, we have this thing called what we call DSP Connect, where if you were to centralize that through an open ad management platform, which is what the Open Ad Stack is all about, then you can execute once, you remove all the discrepancies, your data is united, and we feel those are the problems that the industry needs to overcome. So it needs to be personal to the market, wherever you are in the world, and people need to have the ability to take cost out of the execution and bring better intelligence to what they're finding. So, you know, we have DSP Connect, we have the same approach for social. there's many PMDs out there. There's a lot of people trying to gain traction from a social perspective, but it's not one social partner that's going to give the solution to advertisers. It's going to be a number of social partners. We do the same for search. We work with Marin. We bring Marin data into our platform so that the people can have a view of how search is working with display and online advertising. Because otherwise, I'm looking at one set of data for this, I'm looking at another set of data for that.
I think it's important that you can unify everything in one.
So unification is really important. And then the second point to that is really independence. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So people, one of the things I hear a lot is, certainly from our customers, they want someone who is independent of media to verify that their spend and the actions are actually really driving the outcome that they're looking for. They don't trust they don't trust the media companies themselves to do that. Yeah,
I can understand.
Which is right. So they're looking for a single source of truth that's independent to that, and so we feel like we're pretty well positioned for that. That's why I say we're a real partner to the advertiser. We're not on a separate agenda to that. So I think that's really the sort of essence of what the open ad stack is all about. It's not easy. It's not easy by any means. Trying to bring all these different technologies together in one platform for an advertiser. So I'm not too sure that you deliver the full solution tomorrow. But again, to go back to your very first question, I think as you look at the trends over the next 3 years, this will continue to be a trend. And I think advertisers will move away from the fragmented chaos that they live today, and they will move more towards an enterprise solution that is connected to the other things that they do from an advertising point of view. But at the end, but just to throw that on its head, this industry is built around creativity and innovation. That has to continue. So again, this is another tension point. There's a tension point that says we want everything to come together, but we also want to stay very creative and very innovative. And so we'll have that tension. And I think that's right.
Well, there are lots of new trends happening right now. Social media, interactive video, multi-screen, what we talked about right now. So everything is getting bigger and bigger. So do you think there is kind of a craziness around it? And do you think marketers should embrace all these trends? Or is it going a little bit too far?
I think
because there are some enterprises maybe want to get into social media, but they don't do it really right. So maybe they shouldn't go into social media if they are not able to do it. This is the question.
Personally, I think it is a little bit too much. But I think when you look at you look at marketing directors, you look at the people who work in marketing, whether they're in an agency or an advertiser, you look at the brands they represent. I think you've got brands who have a very sort of steady approach to their marketing. They like to know what works, they like to bring things together, they're very sort of thoughtful around their marketing. And I think that makes sense, financial services industry, the consumer packaged goods, they're very sort of stable in the way that they approach their marketing. And then you have a lot of companies out there that really sort of thrive on innovation, that thrive on new things, and so their appetite for risk, their appetite for trying new things is really, really high. And so I think the craziness around all this fragmentation, all this innovation, dual screen advertising, there's a lot of people who spend a lot of money on TV advertising, and TV advertising has an enormous impact on the market. It's probably the most valuable asset any marketer has is their TV commercial. But how you connect that to online, you're not going to see everybody start to try and connect dual screen, but you will see people experimenting, trying to understand. And it may not stick, it may not work in the form that it's being presented today, but there is definitely something in that, and people will continue to experiment. So in a sense, I think I think the hard thing is for advertisers and their agencies to really get their heads around what's going on. It's a really hard space, you know, and I think that's probably where when you know, publications such as yourself play a really important role in educating, keeping the market informed of what's going on.
The new generation of professionals.
And I think ever since day one, from a technology point of view, you know, when you used to have PC World and Mac Magazine this and that, it's always been this sort of education of understanding what the trends are and how, you know, your customers, advertisers and agencies digest that information. So, you know, on one hand, as a technology company, we try and make that as easy as possible. But we all are, as a technology company, we also create problems as well, which I think is okay. But I do agree with you. It's a little bit crazy. There's a lot of experimenting going on, which is good. Which is good in one sense.
Yeah, it's good. We have to experiment, but sometimes I hear people talking about some things and I realize they don't really understand what they are doing. So that's the point. I think that people are going too far. I think you should embrace all what's happening, and we are evolving, and that's very important. But you should understand first what you are doing and then do it.
And I think, you know, if I sort of look at it, I always sort of use this example. If you have $1 million to spend on media, not necessarily on credit, but $1 million on media, you know, if you think about it, you know, not so long ago, you used to split that traditionally, and you'd have, I'd spend 70% on TV, I'll spend this, I'll spend that, I'll split it that way. I think if you look at it today, the call on that media, that $1 million, well, you've got the split between TV and online, so I've got to split it between those two things. And then within online, I've got to split it 15 different ways. And advertisers are not comfortable with that. And then $1 million isn't getting bigger.
No,
but they've got more ways to spend it, and so I think that's why programmatic is really important, because the return on investment starts to become really, really important. So not necessarily, you know, selecting 1 million people where you think 10,000 of them or 1,000 of them are going to be good, but how do I select the 1,000 people? How do I select the 10,000 people? Or how do I select 50,000 people instead of having to go to 1 million people? I think that's how people deal with the landscape. But as an advertiser, I understand the pressure, I understand the issues that they face.
It is.
It's hard. It's really, really hard.
It's really hard.
And you know, I think as a company, as you know, part of one of the reasons I believe so heavily in data is I don't think about just collecting data. I think about activating data, and I think data helps you optimize audience, helps you optimize media, helps you optimize creative. It helps you optimize, you know, across all these different things. And I think once we start to be able to do that more in a more united way, then the real return on investment of how do I bring my mobile media plan together with my TV media plan together with my online media plan, starts to become, you know, you're seeing a lot of excitement around attribution at this moment in time, and attribution has always really been, it's sort of limited to a number of big advertisers because they were the only ones who could really afford understanding what the full marketing mix is. But I do think that you'll start to see attribution democratized, where it starts to become a staple diet of all advertisers.
Okay. Well, I think that's it.
We covered a lot of ground.